Well, we're at VS Fisheries with Parkman, Park Carp, Simon Scott, with some of his babies, and very impressive they are too. How old are these ones, mate?
These are C3s, Dan, so they've had, C3 means 3 growing summers.
Right, okay. And the weight of these?
These would be about £4, just about on the £4 mark.
Right, okay. And you brought these on from literally nothing?
Yeah, so I would have injected their mother and father, going back 3 summers,
right.
and produced bowls of eggs, which are then fertilised from a male fish, and they come on from that. So the first year they would have been about this size, C1s, we call those.
Right, so 3 or 4 inches long.
Yeah, thereabouts. Right. And then the second year they go to about £1 in our money, and then hopefully £4 to £5 size with your C3s.
Okay. But how much time? Obviously, they're not in these all the time.
No, these are temporary swimming pools. So what we do in the summer is Viv has these in his garden, and he can paddle in them with his daughter. But we use these literally between late October and March. Right. When we harvest upon the fish, they're brought up to the pools. The pools are full of clear.
In October, November time.
Yeah, as we harvest the ponds. So we don't hassle the fish in the summer at all. They're in the ponds. Let's say we stock 100 into a pond. We know the weight of the fish when we go in.
Yep.
We feed them through the summer. As they get bigger, we increase the food ration, and then we harvest them in the autumn, through October through to March. We harvest the bigger fish earlier in the year, and then the fish we go out to sell. So the C3s, the C4s, which will be maybe £9, £10 fish. Right. C5s.
So this is the smallest fish you'll sell?
Yeah, these are the smallest fish we routinely sell.
Right.
We produce a few smaller fish that are surplus, but we don't advertise that. Our business is selling C3s, C4s, C5s, and C6s.
Right. And generally, what do fisheries want?
We have a lot of demand for C3s.
Right.
These fish, really ballpark figures, Dan, but you might say, well, you pay between 25, 35, maybe 40 quid for a C3.
For one of these that's in the pond here?
Yeah, these would be about 25 quid a piece.
Right.
So you get quite a lot of fish for your money at that size. The problem with these fish, if you're stocking them into a big established fishery, is they're a nuisance to the anglers fishing for your 20s and 30s, and they maybe get damaged mouths and a bit roughly handled.
Yeah.
But we do sell a lot of these because if you're starting a new fishery, they represent very good value. You get a lot of fish for your money.
And they're going to grow quick as well.
And they grow quick. They settle in very fast. They're like young teenagers. They get straight into it. Get on the food and grow really quick. And we've sold these over the last few years at sort of £4, and we had loads of customers this winter emailing us and texting us going, you won't believe it, we've had some of your C3s we bought last year, they're only £5, but now they're £14, and you're going, they've done really well. They settle in quick, they're very adaptable at that size, they get settled into the new fishery, and they grow very well. We sell a lot of C4s, which would be, as I said, £9, £10 fish. Right. And that's probably...
What sort of money is that we're talking for one of those?
100, 130 quid in that sort of...
Right.
Okay,
so not unaffordable for lots of clubs that have got a little bit of money in the kitty. Not unaffordable for sort of updating their stock, because everybody loses a few every year. I know I've got a lake in France now. You lose a few, each spring. Yeah. It might be 2 or 3. One year might be half a dozen, but that happens and you don't replenish over a number of years. You might have lost 50, 60 fish over 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem with a lot of established club fisheries is that they buy the stock 20 or 30 years ago as one lump, 100 new fish go in, and they don't last forever. That's one thing that anglers forget, is that carp get old and die, just like we do.
So how long do they live then? This sort of strain here?
Well, these are particularly strong in the Sutton strain. There's a lot of Sutton fish in here, which is a straight Sutton cross that I've done from...
Which is the Sutton Syndicate in Kent,
so,
not far from where I live.
That's right. Going back a good few years now, Ian Welsh, myself, and Viv Shears, we got involved in going there and catching some of the fish. I took them back to Sparkshot College, where I teach with Viv, and we spawned some, and RMC as they were, then had some of the fish back, and I had some to grow on, and so we've now got that as a bloodline that we use on the farm, and they're very popular, and as you can see, they've got the most erratic scaling, they're beautiful fish, lovely looking fish, good variety, and there's very few fish in here that look the same. And one of the things that Viv and I really set the business up on is, if you bought 100 fish from us, hopefully you'd have 100 different looking fish, fish all sorts. They make the most interesting fisheries, so there's a lot of those in.
So these ones, because they're partially Sutton strain, or all Sutton strain, some of them, they're known for living longer, right?
Yeah, well, to go back to the question you asked about longevity, the Sutton fish seem to live fairly well.
So what are we talking? How many years would you expect a carp to live?
Well, I mean, there are reports, you know, of those the original red mark fish being 50, 60, 70 years old. I think fishing's changed a lot. The carp now in our lakes are under a lot of pressure.
Absolutely,
now. They're being hounded 24/7 by anglers that, you know, can watch all the DVDs, read all the books. There's a lot, you know, there's a lot of anglers out there now. But
so you're saying it's our fault, basically?
It's your fault. But I think, yeah, 30 years, you know, maybe
right.
40 years in a good environment, you know, it depends on the stock density and the angling pressure. In a big lake with very little pressure, then they should live longer and obviously do very well. But you've got to be realistic. If they're being caught, you know, every month or every couple of weeks, then their longevity is going to be reduced. But hopefully, you know, the Sutton fish seem to do very well. And the Sutton strain, I'm sure you're aware, but in '76, Sutton drained dry in the drought year,
right.
And some of those fish were rescued and moved to a little known complex called Yateley.
I've heard of that place.
You might have done that. Single
somewhere.
Scale and Chunky and Basil were some of those original Sutton fish, and it's
right.
their offspring that are now the Sutton stock, and it's from them that I got these fish as parents.
So do you cross different?
Yeah, one
breeds, well not breeds, but different bloodlines of fish.
One of the things that, if you read all the paperwork, all the research in Russia, and it applies to not just carp, but to cattle, sheep, dogs, cats. If you want something, you know, you look at the sort of these dogs that are very inbred varieties of dogs, like black flat-coat retrievers. You know, they have
health problems.
They have health problems.
I'm not a dog keeper, but I know
they have
that,
health problems.
Yeah.
And
these
a lot
pedigree
of
sort of breeds.
and because they're brother and sister, uncle, aunt crosses going on, you're losing longevity and disease resistance. So what I try to do, Viv and I sit down in the spring and we go, right, well this year let's try and cross this with that, or this with that. So we often cross Suttons with dinks, or dinks with leanies.
And dinks are the ones we'd associate with not many scales, being very football-y sort of shape, big shoulders.
They're a food strain from Germany, very fast growing.
So they're bred for the table.
Yeah, but they've got a lot of the vigour and growth characteristics that fishery managers want. You know, you sell a batch of fish and say, well, they're going to live for 100 years, but they're only going to go £0.5 a year. You'd be going, well, I'm not sure I can wait that long. So, you know, we've got to try and get the best of both worlds. And as you know, recently, this last summer, we got the chance to spawn a fish from North Harrowtonians. So we brought a big male fish back, and we used some of his sperm, and that's a strain that's historically produced some huge fish.
Yes.
And we've mixed that into our
50-pounding,
proper 50
all
pound
English fish,
proper jobs.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think we've got some really good strains, and by reducing crosses, we've got some really exciting fish coming through on the farm.
So how involved is it to get a fish to this point here? You know, what you know, without giving too many trade secrets away, what is the process? Do they all, do you chuck them in one pond, feed them when they get to this, or what?
Like, it's something as simple as that,
right.
basically. Right. No, there's a lot to it. We actually inject the female fish to spawn them, so we have produced bowls of eggs, so I can say this fish produced that bowl of eggs, and I can use sperm from that male fish, so that's quite important.
So when you sell a fish, you can pretty much say who mum and dad.
Yeah, so I could actually, if we were being trained sponsors about it, I could show you the parents of this batch of fish.
Right, okay.
Exactly who their parents were, and I've got records of the day they were spawned, their birthday, but also how old they are, and so I can go back and say, was that a good cross? Did that really do the goods, or is that a better cross for next year to use? And as the vulnerable stages of a carp really are from it being an egg through to this sort of size. Once they get to 4 pound, pretty much then they're cormorant proof, they're predator proof, and they can go out into an open fishery.
Right. Okay. And we've seen various different ponds around the site of various sizes and depths and everything else. You know, and you've explained to us the importance of being able to drain the ponds down and everything else. So are they in their life? Are they moved from pond to pond, or? Yeah,
that's right. We don't put fish in a pond as fry and then say that's it for 5 years and we'll harvest you as a C5. We move them through the farm. So the farm is like a giant calf conveyor belt.
Right.
And they start off as tiny fry in sterile ponds that we've manured and limed. And as they get bigger, they go into bigger and bigger ponds that are more open. Obviously, once they're 4 pounds, we don't need to put predator netting over the ponds, and they get a bigger home. And the stocking density has to be kept fairly steady throughout, so they don't, otherwise they'd effectively, be too many fish in the pond.
Right. And feeding them, are they fed by machines? Are they hand fed?
No, it's a good question. We feed the fry with belt feeders as well as by hand. So it's a belt.
That?
You draw a belt back and you put a line of food on it. It's like a clockwork mechanism, and it just click, 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 click,
and that drops
and the food just drops off. Yeah.
Right, okay.
But most of the fish are fed by hand, and the hand feeding is really important. As a fish farmer, you have to know your stock a bit, and as you walk around the farm and feed, you like to see a feeding response from the fish. And even the bigger fish that we sell fish sort of up to C6s, C7s. Those
Which are how big?
Well,
C6.
getting on towards mid-20 for that.
Right,
so,
okay.
You like to see some signs of activity when you feed them, because that's giving you feedback. Even if you don't see the fish actually in the flesh, if you're seeing the mud coming up off the bottom, then you know they're there, they're feeding and they're enthusiastic for the food. That's a good sign.
The same thing as we look for when we're fishing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
you can't see the fish on the bottom, because you can see from the ponds around, they're not like this gin clear where you can see everything that's going on, but they're proper stirred up. There's loads of life in there.
Which is good. I mean, and it's just like you're fishing. There are days when you turn up at the lake and think, oh, they were having it today, and I'll put a load in. And there's also days when you think, they're only going to be picking today and I might fish with stringers. And the same applies on the farm. You walk around the farm and there are those hot, muggy days and you think the oxygen levels might be a bit wobbly and we might have the aerators on a bit more in the ponds and the fish aren't really feeding, and it'd be a mistake to stow a load of pellets in because you can pollute the pond. So you need to know the water and the stock.
So even though they're under pressure from a fishing point of view, if you put too much in, it will sit there.
Oh yeah, and you can pollute a pond very quickly by overfeeding it. So it's from the day you get your first goldfish in a bowl and they say at the pet shop, hey, you mustn't overfeed it. The same applies right through.
Okay. I wouldn't have thought that at all. I thought they would have just eaten it and then
No, there are days when on the farm, there are days when you could feed them and feed them and feed them. And being carp, they're greedy pigs.
Yeah.
They will eat and eat and eat. But there's a point where if you just keep feeding them, they're not digesting it. Their digestibility deteriorates. They effectively become a pipe.
Yeah.
Their food's going in at one end, food's going through and coming straight out the other end, and they're not taking the nutrients out of the food. And so they're producing very proteinaceous waste, which then pollutes the pond.
Right.
So if you overfeed in that respect, you're damaging the environment.
So it is an exact science then, really?
Well, it's a bucket and spade science, but there is some science behind it. We don't just shovel the food in.
Right. So you're basing the food that you put in on the amount of fish and the conditions.
Yeah. So we know the biomass of fish approximately in the pond, and we'll feed it a percentage, so maybe 1 or 2 or 3% of that body weight of the whole biomass every day. If it's hot, muggy dip conditions, we might throttle it back a bit. Big southwesterly and the fish are boshing out and you think they're up for it today, then you give them an extra scoop because they're on it. You know? So there isn't, not every day is the same.
Right. And
that's really important, and Richard, who does our feeding, has got a very, very good eye for that.
Right. Is he a good angler as well?
He doesn't fish, but
I bet he would be if he did.
He has me ringing up going, they're eating at the lake today, get some food into them.
So feed-wise then, are you feeding them the same sort of stuff that we would fish with? Like small pellets? And
The pellet size increases as the fish get bigger. So when they're really small, we're feeding, it's literally like flour.
Right.
And then it becomes a very small 1 mil pellet, so tiny pellets which they'd have in their first year. By the time they get to this size, which would be 4 pounders as we've discussed, these would be on a 6 mil pellet.
So fishing with the similar pellet to what you're feeding them when they go out in the fishing lake is going to be a good idea.
They know what it was when they come across it. And what we tend to do is we feed them a carp diet. We also, I'm totally honest, we do feed a bit of trout pellet through the warmest.
So carp diet is carp pellet.
Yeah, so it's lower oil and lower protein.
Right.
We also feed a trout pellet during the warmest months when the fish are growing the fastest. We can put a bit of trout pellet, and we feed probably 1 day a week. So we don't put loads in because it's a bit more oily. And what we do is actually reduce the feed ration a little bit during that period. So we feed a bit of carp pellet, a bit of trout pellet, and we also feed a bit of wheat as well. Because I think it's good for them to have a bit of variety. And one of the things that Viv and I had from the very start was that we didn't want to stock the lake so heavily that there'd be no natural food. We want the fish to live in a fairly natural environment because I think I've grown fish in fiberglass tanks before and fed them loads of pellet and made them grow very quick, but they're not that healthy when they go out. I think it's better for a fish to have had a bit of a natural young, it's teenage years, if you like, a bit in a natural environment, so when they go out they're fitter for the lake they're going in.
The impression I get is that although this is a business and it's now, getting towards your main business, you know, and it's obviously growing, that the ethics of it all and what you're trying to create from an angling point of view means a lot as well. It's not just a money-making exercise.
I'm not a very good businessman. My dad will tell you that. Simon, what have you done with your pocket money? I bought a new rod, Dad.
I'd say that proves you wrong, these fellas.
No, but you know, I'm an out-and-out carp fisherman like yourself, Dan, and nothing makes me buzz more than having customers emailing a picture and going, look at this fish, it's £35 now. I bought this from you 3 or 4 years ago. That's brilliant. I love it. And I love it when I get people email me pictures of fish they caught. I think it's one of your stock fish from 5 years ago. That's brilliant.
Well, Adam had one out of Raisbury, didn't he? £39.
Yeah, that was a mug fish. That don't count.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it's not just about making the money. You're trying to.
There's got to be easier ways of making some money than this, because it's bloody hard work in the winter.
Yeah, and you're working, you know, sort of October, November, right the way through.
Yeah, I don't carp. People say, oh, you must go fishing the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't fish from somewhere about the middle of October, normally, to the middle of March. I don't look at a rod. I think a lot about carp, but they're never on the end of a bit of string.
Right. Okay. So there is a sacrifice.
I dream now. At this time of year, we're in March now. I'm dreaming about sitting behind 3 rods and not seeing a carp for a day or two.
Yeah. Well, unless it's in the bottom of your head.
Yeah, possibly.
So what does the future hold for VS then?
Oh, Viv and I, so there's 4 of us, the directors of VS Fisheries. We're very keen to get it, you know, keep it growing and make it, you know, the best we possibly can. And really, I think we're all passionate about producing the best carp we can that will go on and be the future of British carp. It galls me like mad when I hear stories of fisheries buying in big 40s and having instant fisheries. I just think, why do that? You don't need to do it. You know, it's not fair on the fish. You know, they're coming out of massive lakes in France or on the continent, brought over here and stuck in little puddles, and it makes me very sad.
But things people don't realise though, that those fish, because I've got a lake in France, and people say, oh, there's no disease in France, well there's loads. You know, there's lots of lakes get completely turned over by SVC, and now I think KHV is having an impact on the French things. But if those fish are introduced into a lake here with fish that haven't got anything and they can't deal with it, you're talking about wiping out the existing stock for the sake of a few big ones. Yeah. And I think the thing that galls me the most is the so-called angler that is smuggling them in. You know, I can't see how they call themselves an angler at all, because if those fish get caught at customs on either side, they destroy them, don't they? Yeah, just poison them. Yeah. And I've spoken to people, you know, over here that have to do that for a living, and they said it's heartbreaking, you know, to poison water that's got 40 pounders in, but because the origin's unknown and everything else, they can't risk putting them in anywhere else. So they're risking the death of the fish for a pound note. Yeah. You know, and I can't. When you've got this option, why do it? Well, it might take a few years longer, but to see that, you know, I mean, there's loads of scaly ones, but you know, this linear down here, to see him go from £10 to £40 must be massively satisfying.
And as a fishery manager, it couldn't be better, could it? But no, there's it's just a shame that's happened, and it happens. But hopefully, you know, the future is we can produce lots of stunners that will make people very, very happy. And these look all right, don't they?
Yeah,
can't wait to see them next year. I get all excited in midsummer because I'm thinking, I wonder what they're going to look like when we harvest the pond.
Yeah, wicked. Okay. Well, that's all we've got time for at VS Fisheries. A thriving business, doing it exactly the right way. And if you want to get in touch with them, check out the website and we'll give you the details.